Right, one of the most important things you've got to do at this time of year is change the line on your reels. It's always good to go into a new season with good, new, fresh line on there. And also, if you leave your old stuff on, you know what, it might be a bit damaged, you might lose fish. So let's have a look at the way to do it properly. I like to get all my bits and bobs together first. As you can see, I've got an array of things here. And what I'm going to do today is talk about how to do this properly so it sits on your reels really, really well and you avoid the dreaded line twist. So let's have a look at some spooling up hacks. Get yourself one of these. Now this is a very simple thing that you can get from any supermarket, 3 or 4 quid, but believe me, this makes respooling really, really simple. As you can see, drop your spool of line in there, and what that does is it holds it in the right direction. It holds it upright. Now when you're spooling up, you need the line to be coming off this way. You don't want it coiling off either side. In the olden days, we used to stick a pencil through, you needed a mate, you'd reel it in like that, but actually doing it this way is perfect. 1, because you can do it on your own. 2, because it won't go wrong. It'll just sit there like that. And 3, having water in it does 2 things. Firstly, it lubricates the line on the way in, and secondly, what it does is it keeps a little bit of tension on it too. We'll come to that a bit later on, but believe me, trick number 1, get yourself a store and pour. Now this is a really big question. Do you need to soak your line? And lots of people advocate soaking the line for a good 24 hours before you start spooling on. You don't need to do that. And I've heard all sorts of rubbish talked about why you soak your line beforehand. They talk about water going into the line, making it heavy, etc, etc, all the air coming out of the line. What you do find though, and I've seen this loads of times underwater, is brand new line for some reason attracts bubbles. I've seen it myself. New line's gone in there, it floats on the surface. In addition to that, when I've been diving, I've seen loads and loads of tiny micro pinhead bubbles attaching to it, and that will lift the line up. It also, even if it doesn't lift it up to the surface, makes it really obvious below the surface. So it does pay just to soak your line a little bit beforehand, because that takes away some of that fresh coating on there and it makes air bubbles harder to stick to it. So now let's get on with the nitty gritty of it. We're going to change our line. So there's various different ways that you can take the line off. One of them, of course, is just to wrap it around the old elbow. The other one, if you're clever, is you get yourself a de-spooler like this. Now they're really, really good bits of kit. I'll just take that off there. There it is. This is a de-spooler. Very simple, easy to use, and it just pops into a standard drill, or alternatively, screwdriver will do it as well. Now I've nearly taken off all the line that I've done previously to previous backing. I'm not going to strip this spool completely. It's a deep spool, but I don't need the full depth of line. So this is going to be a casting rod rather than a boating out rod. So all I've got to do is fill it back up again. And that, I know from previous experience, is probably a good couple of 100 yards. I'll take just a little bit more off, and then we'll see where we go. That'll do it. So that can now be cut off. And just while you've got your line off here, just have a quick check of the spool rim. This is an area that can get damaged if your rods drop over. Alternatively, it can be chipped very easily. So what I like to do is just get a bit of kitchen roll and just give it a nice little clean. You're cleaning right into that spool lip. It's not something that sees the light of day very often, but it is something that gets lots and lots of muck in there. So just go right around the spool lip, and then after you've given it a good clean, just run your fingers around the outside of it like so, just to feel if there's any nicks on there. Any little nicks or scratches that can cause damage to your line, and it's best if you get rid of the spool and get yourself a new one. But that one feels okay. So spool is absolutely fine, ready to go again. Right, the next point is let's have a look at the reel. We know the spool is ready to go. We know that it's nice and clean, but it's also worthwhile checking underneath it and checking your reel now. So point number 1, just have a look at the shaft that's coming up through the middle of the reel. This is a really, really important bit now, because that is what's going to transfer any rubbish into the body of the reel. Now these days, you don't need to take your reel to pieces. A lot of people used to maintain their reels by taking them off, undoing these screws on the side there, pumping some more grease in it. Don't do it. For a start, what it does is it invalidates a lot of the warranties on these reels. So if these screws are taken off, if anything goes wrong inside and you've taken it apart, you lose the warranty on it. So don't go in there at all. You just don't need to. It's got special grease in it, and if you put the wrong grease back in again in the winter, it might seize, or alternatively it might clamp the bearings up. The only bit that you need to worry about is this bit up here, and also the main shaft running through the middle. So what you can do is you can take off your cog, that's for the ratchet, put it to one side, make sure you know where it is, take off your line assembly, and then if you need to, just give it a quick clean up that shaft with that paper as well, because that's an area that you can get little bits and bobs of grit on, and it's one of those bits that might transfer grit inside. So having given it a nice little clean like that, the next thing that I do is a small squirt of WD-40 just up that shaft, and then give a little run up and down as well. What I've now got to do is put everything back together again. So the first thing that goes on is the line guard assembly. They're offset, so if you put it on the wrong way around, it won't sit properly. There we are. That's gone in nicely. And the next thing you've got to do is you've got to get your cog with a washer on and pop that on the top. Now that has been set up for this reel already, but just have a think about how you want your line lay. Remember, in the box, you get this little polythene snap seal thing with two very thin washers in. What on earth are they for? Now most people just leave them in the box, never ever get them out. These are called shims, and what they do is they adjust the line lay up and down the spool. So for example, with a Daiwa spool, for example, some of them are cones, so it's bigger at the front than the back. With some of the tighter Shimano ones, they're wider at the back than they are in the front. And a lot of reels these days are just straight parallels, so you have a parallel line lay up it as well. Now what you can do is you can adjust the line lay with these. So this has already been set for me. I'm going to put my cog back on again, and I'm going to put the washer over the top exactly as it was. So spin that one on, make sure it goes on properly, slide it down there, washer on the top. If I wanted more line lay at the front, then what I would do is I would take that big one off and I'd put it behind, or put a small one behind the cog itself. So that's the way that you adjust it, either a thicker one or a thinner one there. It might take trial and error, but that's what these things are for, shims, remember it. And if you forget it from here, don't forget, there's always instructions in the box. Right, next thing to do is putting the line on itself. So I've got the line. Today I'm spooling up with a very thin line. This is 0.22, 9.5 pound velocity. It's going onto my casting rod. Literally just back to back 4 turns. So blood knot 1, 2, 3, 4. It shouldn't have to be super strong, this. It just needs to hold, because it should never really see the light of day. What we need to do now is just cut those 2 tag ends off really, really close. So that one's not quite enough. There, take that one down a little bit more. And they're nice and tight. They'll bed in right at the very back of the spool. Right, this is where the fun begins. Right, I'm getting towards nearly done now, so I'm going to slow down a little bit and just keep an eye on the spool itself. And this is where you've got to be a little bit clever, because you want a little bit of lip on that front of the spool there. You don't want it coming right up to the end, because if it does back up at the back end of the spool, there's a chance that it will catch on the line clip and you'll get crack-offs. Take it up really nice and tight up towards that back end of the spool there, and leave a mil, maybe 2 mil at the front maximum, but a mil should be good at the front. And that is not far off absolutely bang on. And of course the final thing is, what do you do with your line? Well, of course you don't throw it away. What you do is you recycle it. I've got a bag here with a load of line that I've already done, so don't forget, this is the way that the old stripper works, and that can go in my bag with all the rest of the line ready for the next one to be done. And the Anglers National Line Recycling Scheme will take this off you, and what they will do is they will recycle that into all manner of things. They're making board with it, they're making line recycling kits with it, rod stands with it, all sorts of stuff. So get it into a bag and get it recycled. Hopefully the local tackle shop near you should have a bin to be able to put it into. If they haven't, have a word with the Angling National Line Recycling Scheme and get them to send one up, or better still, get the shop to do it too. Well, thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed what you've seen. If you want to see more from me and my pals, of course there is loads of it, but the first thing you've got to do is get down there, see that big red button, subscribe to us, and at the same time please do give us a thumbs up. In the meantime, loads and loads of films over there, so get watching. We'll see you in the next one.